There you go. So you've mentioned almost everything. Have a look and tell me which one is it, or which ones are they that you haven't mentioned so far?
Look professional to your learners.
Looks professional indeed.
We didn't mention the last one, helps your observer reader, what went about preparing.
Exactly. So basically it can function as, well, as it says there, as a starting point for your own reflection after the lesson, but also it gives a colleague or a person observing or a tutor the opportunity to see how you went about preparing that lesson and what things you took into account. For example, how you chose the materials and why you chose specific materials and so on. So the most important things with your lesson planning are going to be these two on the Delta course. And without question, I don't even need to mention those three, right? Of course, you can't teach without a lesson plan, or it makes it much more difficult to teach without a lesson plan.
No.
Prepared.
You cannot teach without a lesson plan.
All right, Abu, I see your point. Thornbury there and others would disagree with you with teaching unplugged, but I do agree with you on that. And so the first three are a given. That's why you need a plan on each of your LSAs. The last two are because the lesson plans on the Delta are basically used as an assessment tool. And that's why, as Ahmed said at the beginning, they can be 15 pages long, they can be 20 pages long, because we cannot read your mind, unfortunately. We have to see how you went about preparing that lesson plan and your rationale behind it. So, how many lesson plans will you have to produce? On the course, that is, yeah?
I think they are 4 related to the 4 LSA.
Exactly. So, and your LSA is the S. What does it stand for?
Systems or
Systems or skills. Okay. One of the systems is grammar. Can you give me any other systems?
phonology.
Lexis.
And one more?
Phonology.
Yes, and one more?
Discourse.
Discourse, yes. So grammar, lexis, phonology, and discourse. How many of these will you have to produce?
2 at least.
Not at least, 2. And then we have listening, and what other skill?
Reading, writing,
and speaking.
Speaking.
Why do I have them in different colors?
Receptive and productive.
Receptive and
Exactly.
productive. Yeah.
Exactly. So you will need 2 LSAs focusing on systems, and you will need 2 LSAs focusing on skills. One has to be a receptive skill, and the other one has to be a productive skill. So, would you be able to do grammar, phonology, listening, and reading as your 4 LSAs? No. Grammar, discourse, reading, and speaking?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So let's have a look then at some lesson names and the areas they cover. I'll send you the task sheet so that you can use it as you wish, because it's just the 4 of us for this second session. I'm not going to send you to breakout rooms unnecessarily. And what I want you to do together is to have a look at these 8 aims and decide which area each one focuses on. So for example, what about number one? Which of these areas does it focus on?
Writing,
Pay closer attention.
grammar,
What do the
Describe
rest
a,
of you think?
describe a process.
Um,
Describing a
Oh.
process in writing
Sounds
using
like it's
passive
speaking.
present verbs.
So it's grammar and writing.
A process in writing using passive present verbs. Therefore, not writing, don't confuse it with process writing, right? It has nothing to do with
It's a-
methodology.
it's, mm,
So this one is grammar.
grammar. Mm.
Exactly. So I will send you the tashi in the chat. There you go. Let me know when you've downloaded it.
yes, I did.
Abu,
Yes.
perfect. Vasily, okay?
yeah.
Good. So I will disappear and you can work together. The first one was grammar. What areas do the rest of the aims show or reflect? Go ahead.
Okay.
Do you need me to write things down, guys?
Please,
Yeah, it's
please.
better.
All right. So that's number 2, right? So fluency is the key word. Start speaking, you think?
Fluency skills.
Actually-
Yeah.
Actually, it can be fluency. It can be hesitation. That's speaking. Yeah, fluency of hesitation devices filters. That's
Yeah, like,
speaking.
let's see. All right.
Yes, yes.
So 3.
The learner will
Production.
produce.
It's a production of skill.
It's writing.
Writing. Yeah.
Email. Formal email. It's writing.
Producing an email is writing. Yeah.
Intonational clues. That
That's
would be phonology.
Listening.
Let's listening. Yeah. Tone.
Is it listening or phonology?
No, it's listening.
It's listening.
Intonation, yeah, whether the voice is high pitch, low pitch, whether is it invitation, threatening,
All right.
it's listening.
It's not phonemic awareness now.
5. Aware of ways of organizing an oral or written narrative and using appropriate cohesive devices.
That's complicated.
I think that's phonology.
Oral or written, it says.
Yeah. Oral is.
The aim here is cohesive devices. So is that
That's
Lexis?
Lexis.
Lexis. All right, 6.
Learner will be able to distinguish between reproduce intonation pattern.
That's phonology.
Phonology.
That's phonology, yes.
Mhm.
7, the learner will learn how to use syntactic, and contextual clues to infer meaning. How it's reading?
That's discourse.
Yep. I think it's reading too, because you're supposed to use syntax and morphosyntax, all right, and context. So, and written text.
Okay, learn.
Then 8, revise common collocations. Daily activities, collocations.
It's Lexis as well.
Mm.
Can be Lexis
Or discourse.
Could be,
or
could be.
discourse.
Okay, so discourse it is. Okay, so we've got 2 speaking, 3 writing, 4 listening, 5 Lexis, 6 phonology, 7 reading, and 8 discourse.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look.
Now, the first one we said, okay, come on. The first one we said grammar. The
Mhm.
second one you said speaking.
Mhm.
Exactly. And the giveaway there was fluency and
Fluency.
hesitation devices and fillers. And 3, you said writing.
Writing.
Writing, yeah.
Exactly. And if you notice, we have the type of text, right? A
Email.
formal email asking for information on a product. So we have the genre. And number 4, you were in between pronunciation, phonology, or listening, right?
Hmm.
Now, which one did you decide it was?
Listening.
And you're absolutely right. Now, why is it listening and not phonology? 6, for example, you said it was phonology. What is the difference between these two?
Phonology, I think, is sounds.
Well, both of them are sounds and they're
Mm,
features of phonology. Intonation is part of phonology. However, can you see between number 4 and 6, can you see any additional point in number 6?
Yeah, production.
Yes. So number 1, distinguish and be able to reproduce. So there will
Okay.
be some production of that specific phonological feature. Whereas in number 4, it is just identifying it for the purposes of interpreting a speaker's attitude. If they're angry, if they're happy, if they're being sarcastic,
The
and so
tone.
on. Exactly. And number 5,
Number 5.
Lexis, we said.
are you sure? When we focus on how a text is glued together, for example, using cohesive devices like however, nevertheless.
That's discourse markers.
Exactly,
Oh.
exactly. In other words, there's discourse markers. So that's discourse. Then you said phonology, and number 7,
Said reading. Yes.
Reading, yes.
exactly. Because it's basically how to guess the meaning of a word based
Okay.
on the surrounding features like the sentence, the context, and whether it ends in li, ik, meant, whether it is preceded by a verb, or whether it is followed by an adjective or a noun or whatever. This is what we mean by morphosyntactic and contextual clues. And the last one, as soon as you see collocations.
Lexis.
Exactly. Now, for each one of these, however, you may have noticed on the timetable, there is a block. We will be focusing on grammar. We will be focusing basically on all 4 systems and all 4 skills. And we'll see exactly how we can state aims, what each of these entails, and so on. But as we said, going back to our topic without losing sight of the aim, this session is about the Delta lesson plans and all the details that we have to add to these lesson plans. Remember, I told you it's an assessment tool. Therefore, there is a whole category with criteria. And what I'd like us to do, that is the category, by the way, category 5. And from A to K, you can see the criteria that we use to assess a lesson plan on the Delta Module 2.
Sure.
Now, I will leave it here. And number 1, to scare you. And number 2,
11.
so that you can see what type of information you should include in your lesson plans. So based on these criteria, what type of information should we include? For example, based on 5A, what type of information should I include in my lesson plan?
anticipated problems?
No,
No?
based on
What
five,
level?
based on 5A, it's not anticipated problems.
It's
The
data
level,
about
yes,
data about the course or the students I'm going to teach. and the course I'm
exactly.
going-
So an overview information in relation to the group of learners that I will be teaching and the course, and information about individual.
Oh, profiles.
Exactly, a profile, basically, a class profile and individual profiles. So,
Relevant to the lesson. So for example, if
yes,
there's some students are weak in writing, for example.
if you're not teaching writing, however, and you're doing grammar, that wouldn't be relevant. So if you're
Okay.
teaching grammar, you would be focusing on the grammar knowledge of each learner. So I will leave it here and I will give you individually work on this on your own first. I'll give you about 5 minutes and do what we basically did for 5A. So go ahead, and then after you're done, give me a thumbs up and you will share your ideas with each other. Go ahead.
Hello?
First we work individually, right?
Yes, first work on your own, and when you're done, give me a thumbs up.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ahmed,
Okay, because the
your connection was no good.
was okay.
Okay, Vasily, that was a thumbs up. Ahmed and Abu, are you ready?
Yeah.
Just a minute.
Yes, I'm done. Yeah.
All right, so when you're done, compare your answers. What do you think?
Okay, so as far as 5B is concerned, we will be assessed on how we set our aims and how we state them. They should be clear and they should be appropriate.
Yes, clear objectives.
Objectives, your outcomes.
Mhm.
CLOs, PLOs.
5C, we need to analyze
The,
what
the skills
we're going
targeted
to
for
be
our
teaching.
students. The skills targeted for our school, for our lesson plan.
Yeah, it talks about language here. So inevitably there is going to be language used, right? So even if our primary focus, for example, is a skill, we're going to do that through, I don't know, a text or something that includes language, right? Which we need to analyze that.
Okay.
D, I got you checking for understanding.
Checking for
Sorry,
understanding
Abu?
or
D, I've got checking for understanding.
understanding, or we are looking for the cross-linked lessons. So if you are already told that lesson or told that skill before, what's the relation between that lesson and the
Yeah.
current one?
Exactly.
How it connects to any other lessons. For example, if you've taught, if you've used the same context in teaching
Or the
grammar in
same
previous
material.
lesson,
Contextual clues.
or you're teaching you're teaching writing in the next one, so you have to indicate the connection, or you have to say, for example, if it's part of an entire course, where in the course this lesson fits in. But I don't know if you agree.
Okay, I think I agree.
Yes. Me too.
What about 5E?
5E.
It's the anticipated outcomes for my lesson. I mean that what I anticipate, what will happen to my students after receiving this lesson. So how their
How do
targeted
you,
skill.
with due respect, how do you know that you've achieved those outcomes or not?
Exactly how I achieve them, how they get my.
How do you know that you have achieved them?
Yeah, I think that's what Ahmed means, right? So you have an initial knowledge of the student. So the students walks in the classroom without knowing how to use modal verbs, for example. And they walk out of the classroom and they've shown that they know how to use modal verbs. That's what you mean, Ahmed, right?
Exactly.
That's not what I mean. What I mean is, how do you as the teacher know that you've achieved those particular outcomes?
Actually, we know that when we use the CCQ, if you remember the comprehension check question.
Okay.
Or
Okay, the next one.
F, anticipated and explain potential problems. This is the anticipated problems and how we solve them during our session.
Yep. And G is the solutions to these problems. So what are you going to do if this problem comes up?
Yes.
Okay. H.
That's the activities themselves, right?
The guided practice.
Yeah, any type of activity you have. If you have, for example, reading for gist first, and then reading for detail, or reading for specific information, and how they sequence. For example, if you have reading for detail before reading for gist, that's not a good sequence, is it?
Okay.
And I is the materials and resources, right? Am I using videos? Am I using a projector? Am I using,
Technology.
Textbook.
yeah, visuals, realia? Realistic and appropriate timing. So we are going to be assessed on how well we time our activities. So if we say, for example, that our activity is going to be 15 minutes and it takes like 30 minutes, then it's not good for us.
Time
Of
management.
course.
And after that, there's the commentary, right?
Where's the production?
What do you mean?
Every lesson should have a production, isn't it?
It's
It's
in
the outcome. We already said that the outcomes. It's number E.
Mm.
This is
and
our
age.
production.
And age. This is basically what you're assessed on.
No, I think that the outcomes are E. H is the procedure,
Okay.
the activity, the procedures.
And what about the commentary, guys? Rationale for why did I choose to
Oh,
have the lesson plan
I
this way?
think George mentioned that in the first session, that 750 words. It's a reflection.
Yeah, you see rationale there. So you need to justify, for example,
Yeah.
what kind of aspects do you
Mm.
think? I
You
mean, why
mentioned-
did I use this
Mm.
context, for example?
Mm.
Why did I use this type of task and not the other type of task?
Mhm.
Good. Now,
Okay.
let me clarify something. Abu, these criteria
Mhm.
have to do with the lesson plan that you will prepare before you teach, right?
Yes.
So when you prepare that lesson plan, these are the criteria that, for example, George and I would use to assess this lesson plan. Now, whether the lesson plan has production, what stages it has, and so on, that's a different thing. It's one of these criteria. And the last one is not about the reflection. You were right. It's about the rationale. You will see later the specific part of that lesson plan.
Okay.
So
So the
you
rationale.
mentioned that this one was the class profile and individual learner profiles. And this one is what?
The aims and
Um,
expected.
Objective.
The aims
The
and the
objectives, yeah.
outcomes. Exactly. Now, the key word here is outcomes. And when we get to the assumptions, the other criterion, you will see why I've underlined it. Number 3 is, sorry, C, criterion C is
Analysis of the target language.
language analysis, exactly. Now, when it says meaning, use, form, and pronunciation, if, for example, you're analyzing a text, like you're not teaching grammar, right? You're doing speaking or reading, for example. We will see in each block how the language analysis for different types of lessons should be done. But there is always some language element in there too. This one, you were right. When it comes to your lesson, how does it fit in with previous lessons the learners have had, and how it fits with future lessons the learners are going to have? That can be described in full only if you're using basically your own classroom and they have your own group of learners and they have a specific syllabus. If you choose one of our classes to do your LSAs with, then we will give you some background on what they've done. But for future lessons, they don't have a specific syllabus. Now, this one is about the assumptions that you think that you've made, basically, about the learner's knowledge, interests, and so on. So this is not about the outcomes. This is not how you're going to check if you've achieved your aims. Whether you've achieved your aims or not is this one here, basically, the learning outcomes. So you have your aims, and therefore what you expect the learners to be able to do by the end of the lesson, the learner outcomes. The assumptions have to do with, for example, if you're teaching grammar, right? Let's say you're teaching the present simple versus the present progressive. What do you think the learners already know about the language? In that lesson, you're using a context of two people looking for work. What do you think the learners know about the context? Why do they find it interesting? Why have you chosen, or what do you expect them to be able to do in a specific activity? So these are the assumptions that we make about the learner's knowledge, abilities, and interests. Is it now a bit clearer? So it's not how you're going to achieve your aims. This is stated here. This is what you expect the learners to already know. And then we have, as you very nicely said, anticipated problems, along with G, the solutions. Then we have basically the description of the lesson, the procedure of the lesson, right? And whether we've sequenced those stages in an appropriate way in relation to the aim. Then, where did you find the material?
The resources.
Are you going to be using a video? Are you going to be using images? Are you going to be using a course book? And so on. This one is the time allocation for each stage. And the last one is, is a text, basically, prose. In other words, you're telling us, you're explaining why you've chosen specific activities, specific materials, a specific order of stages, specific methodological choices in relation to the learner's characteristics and needs.
It's a justification, the justification in other words.
Exactly. It's a justification of the whole rationale behind your plan. And the research you've done in the background essay. We will be looking at a commentary too. So, in a nutshell, these are the different components of a Delta lesson plan. Class profile and the relevant details on individual students, they're the same criterion, 5A. The timetable fit, in other words, criterion 5D, how your lesson fits in with preceding or future lessons the learners have had and will have. The aims, the language analysis, the assumptions, problems and solutions, the materials and the sources, the commentary, and the procedure. These are the different sections. So, and obviously in the end, copies of the materials, right? So, Ahmed, do you see now why it's about 15 pages or more? Because
of
of all
course.
these,
Very
because of all
detailed.
these different sections.
Very
The
detailed.
reason, yeah, it's unrealistically detailed, basically, right? It's, you don't do that in real life, obviously.
That's what I was about to ask you now. It's not possible to do this on a daily basis.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. And you're not expected to do that on a daily basis. However, remember, this is one of the functions of the lesson plan is for the observer to be able to see
To make logical.
how you went about preparing, because unfortunately, we can't read your minds. That's why we have to see it written.
Okay.
In real life, of course, it's not such a lengthy procedure, and it's not such a lengthy file, because we don't have to read your minds. No one has to read your mind. You know what you thought about. You know, for example, the commentary, this one here, you
So-
don't need to make anyone else aware of why you did something, because you know why you did it.
It's intuitive. Yeah.
Not just intuitive, you don't need to raise anyone's awareness or make them aware of why you're doing something. You know why you're doing something. On the delta, this is assessed, therefore you need to write it down.
You must do it.
So, guess what we're going to do now?
Do it.
Have a model for lesson plan.
Well, we will evaluate the lesson plan. On your task sheets, can you check if this link works? In task 3, the underlined Delta Module 2 lesson plan, there is an embedded link there. If you click on it, can you let me know if it works?
Yeah, I think it works.
So can you see a Delta grammar lesson?
Delta lesson plan, background information. Yeah.
Bravo,
grammar lesson.
yeah. Let me show you. I'll share it with you. Can you see it?
Mhm.
Perfect. So that's the whole lesson here. It's a bit longer than 15 pages, right, Ahmed? Sorry about this. I didn't mean to scare you. However, look, from 19 to the end is just copies of the materials, right?
Mm.
So what I want you to do is first read the lesson plan carefully and basically evaluate it using these points here. Number one, we saw, for example, all the different areas that we need to cover. Does it include all the required information? How well does the plan meet the criteria? So you will need these two. What kind of information is included in the procedure, and how easy would you find it to use this lesson plan, the procedure? Then a specific look at learner profiles. How relevant is the information included to the specific lesson? And then look at the commentary. So you don't have to read everything in detail. Number one, you just go through it quickly to see if all of the areas are included in the lesson plan. And then each one, how well does it meet the criteria? Then you go to the procedure. Is it clear? Would you be able to teach that lesson based on that procedure? Then you go to the individual learner profiles and you look at the information if it's relevant to the specific lesson, grammar, in other words. And then you go to the commentary. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to work on the plan and these questions on your own. Okay? After those 10 minutes have passed, I'll ask you to work together and compare your ideas.
All right.
So are you ready?
Hey, Alex,
Yes, Abu.
I can't access this thing.
Come again?
I can't access the
The lesson
framework.
plan.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try and send you the link separately.
Can you send it in the chat?
Let me check if I can send the grammar lesson in the chat. Yes.
Please.
Give me 1 minute. The rest of you can start, by the way. Vasily and Ahmed, you can start until I send Abu the lesson plan. Abu, just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
I'm uploading it now, Abu. It takes a bit more time because it's a big file. Can you see it now, Abu, in the chat?
Yes, it's in the chat. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Oh, those are the assumptions. I expect that. Oh, expect.
All right, I'm done.
Okay. Me too.
Okay, me too. I'm also too.
Okay, I think this lesson plan so far has covered all the required criteria. Except the relevant link to previous and the following lessons. So do you agree with me or not?
There's some of that in the what's it
Rational,
called?
commentary.
In the rational, the commentary. Yeah, there's some of that in the commentary. I think that the
But it's not stated clearly as required by as a piece of criterion, and the lesson plan should be stated clearly how this lesson plan is related to the previous one. How does it fit?
Yeah, but other than that, everything else, like you said, Ahmed, is in place, right? The timing,
Exactly.
the,
The commentary, the procedure, the
with all these
class
PDFs.
profile, the profile, students profile, everything
The-
there, but relevancy to previous lesson taught is not there, except
you-
in the rational.
Do you think that all the information in the individual learner's profile is relevant? I mean, this is a grammar lesson, right?
Yes.
But if yes, Abu, were you saying something?
No, you keep on going.
I saw all kinds of stuff in the learner profiles, not necessarily relating to grammar. There were references about basically their entire existence as students, as learners. I don't know if you agree with me.
Some of the
Yeah.
profile is not related to the grammar, as we say. It should be
Yeah.
related. This is our concern. So we are teaching here the system of grammar, and the student's profile should be related to grammar only, not other aspects.
Mhm.
So I can see, for example, Hilwan here, he's likely familiar with TL. So it's not related to, and pronunciation is not related to the grammar,
Mhm.
the profile that we are looking for.
Right, and what about the commentary? Do you think that it includes all of the following bullet points?
Let me go to commentary. I think some of the commentary is not related. Like, given that many of the learners are refugees and unemployed or retired, I felt that they may not be uncomfortable sharing their daily lives. Not related. What do you
Not
think?
related. Not related to what, Ahmed?
Not related. Why he decided to give them that skill, grammar skill?
You feel that there's not enough justification, you mean?
Exactly.
As far as the bullet points are concerned, I think the only thing missing, I mean, except for how accurate they are, I think what's missing is the detailed descriptions of activities. All the others, I think, are there, regardless of how successful they are. I have to admit, I didn't check, for that. I wasn't looking for that. I was only looking for whether the content was there.
Mhm.
So basically, that's the only bullet point that I found missing. There was no detailed reference to the activities. There was some mention of them, but not detailed. The rest of them, I think, are there. What do you guys think?
I focused essentially on two things.
Mhm.
I focused on anticipated problems and on assumptions.
Mhm.
Those two portions of class profile, timetable fit, aims, language analysis, assumptions and anticipated problems, these two parts are the most, and obviously the commentary, are the most difficult aspects of the lesson,
Mhm.
in my opinion.
So you were looking for
That is what I was essentially focusing on. That's what I was,
the challenges.
yeah, the challenges.
All right. Okay.
And not specifically, specific points.
Okay.
So you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Let's have a look at it together then. First things first, does it cover all of the points, all of the criteria?
All of them except the relevance to previous lessons.
All right, so let's take them one by one. There is a class profile,
Yes, it's a class profile.
individual learner profiles,
Yes.
the lesson aims, and we have the objectives and the evidence, the outcomes, in other words, right?
Yeah.
We have the language analysis, meaning, form, spelling, phonology, and any additional language here. Now, the timetable fit. Ahmed, you disagree with the timetable fit. Remember what I told you, this is a borrowed class. So of course, it's not going to have all of the information because all of the information is non-existent, actually.
Yeah.
It's not a group of learners that has a specific syllabus. So the teacher will state only what is known.
If I remember correctly, you said the timetable fit can only work if it is your own classroom that you see every single day.
Or if you're teaching a group of learners that have a specific syllabus.
Yeah.
The assumptions you can see here that it's not just about the aim and the language. It's about the learner's knowledge of the context or the topic, if you will. It's about the learner's abilities in specific activities and so on. Then we have the problems and the solutions, right? Then the resources and the materials, where they were taken from, and then the commentary. Then we have the procedure and the materials in the end. Now, what about the procedure? Was it clear? If you were the teacher, would you be able to do that lesson?
Yeah.
We have the
Sounds perfect.
teacher and learner activity. We have how much time, why they're doing it, the objective, the interaction, and what materials and resources should be used. And it's clear what stage each one is. Now, whether you agree with the actual lesson or not, that's a completely different thing, and we're not, we don't care about that at this point. Now, what was the other question? Let me check. Oh, yes, let's go to the individual learner profile. There we are. So the individual learner profiles, remember, this is a grammar lesson. Do we have information on the students in relation to the aim?
Not for
No.
every student.
Not for every student, right?
Mm,
However, can we know more about every student?
generally, yes.
We could, if we interview them, if we observe them regularly, and so on. But for some students, there is information relevant on grammar. Mind you, not on the present perfect, the grammatical background knowledge in general.
Mm,
It shouldn't be on the present perfect anyway. It should be about grammar in general. Now, what about, let's go to the commentary. Tell me, what did you think about the commentary?
What did I say?
Is there any, yes, Vasily?
I thought, yeah, I said that it was missing only the third bullet point. I think that all the other bullet points were included.
Detailed descriptions of activities, right?
Yeah, that there was no detailed description. There was a reference to the activities, but not a detailed one.
A detailed description of the activity is not necessary.
oh,
So, for example, I attempted a guided discovery. I will employ a generative situation. A controlled oral practice will help consolidate. So whether the learners are going to say something chorally or individually, whether they're going to walk about in the classroom asking questions, that shouldn't be part of the commentary. Otherwise, you would need 1,500 words. And this shouldn't be part of the commentary because this is part of the procedure. So detailed descriptions of activities we don't need in the commentary. Are there any references to the background studying, the research and the essay that this teacher
Yes,
has
sir.
created? Yes. Are there any references to methodology and methodological decisions?
PPP.
Exactly. And do we see reasons for these choices?
Yeah, there's justification.
Exactly. So, is it now clearer what the commentary is about?
Mm,
So the student profiles, like this is a sample from the two students we saw. Let's focus on how the information on these, on individual students is not just general, but
it's
related
specific.
to the aims exactly and the
It's
content
specific, yeah.
of the specific lesson. For example, there is something about Alessandra and her motivation at the beginning here. There is something on her speaking, fluency over accuracy. However, despite the grammar focus, I expect that the communicative tasks and pronunciation focus will keep her engaged. So there is some knowledge of the fact that, okay, she's much more fluent than she is accurate when she speaks, obviously in relation to grammar. Therefore, this and that, X and Y, X and Z activities will help her get more engaged. There is a focus on accuracy, therefore I believe she will enjoy the grammar focused on activities because she likes that. So now we see that the information on grammar that we need is not, oh, they know all the articles, oh, they know all the tenses. Yes, if you have that knowledge, yeah, you can include it, no problem. But you don't have to be specific in that respect. Or so specific, I should say. Now, and why do I need to bother compiling a class profile? Why is it important?
It's
Well, what do you
probably
think?
the most important part of the lesson.
Why, Abu, tell us.
If you don't know who you are teaching, how can you teach them?
So if you know who you're teaching, I completely agree with you. If you know who you're teaching, how is this going to help you? And still focus on the lesson plan. If you know who you're teaching, how can that help you with your plan?
So we can design the lesson plan to be fit for our students. So we know their level, we know their profile, their level, so we can design a specific lesson plan that target this skill or that system.
Excellent. So let's go back to the components so that we can check a couple of things. So if I know the students well, then you said that I can write up a commentary, provide the rationale for the activities and the materials I'm going to choose so that they are interested in the topic, right? They're interested in the materials. Therefore, I know how much the learners can cope with in one lesson, so my aims will be better. And I know what to expect, obviously. What about if I know my learners very well, I can also anticipate problems.
I can teach to their strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. So another way in which the class profile is important is, if you remember in the anticipated problem section, can you notice some of the more analytic learners, Said and Oruz, may request additional grammar explanation. So I know what to expect. Anticipated problems should include, therefore, some reference to individual learners, if it's possible.
Okay.
So the better you know the learners, the more accurate and specific your anticipated problems are going to be. Also, as you mentioned, this is part of the commentary, right? How has the class profile helped this teacher when preparing that lesson plan? What does this teacher tell us?
He's gained some
So,
experience from the previous lesson.
Exactly. Therefore, the choice of methods and techniques will be affected. And by affected, I don't mean in a negative way, I mean in a positive way. They will choose appropriate techniques, they will choose a suitable method for the specific group of learners. So it is far likelier that this lesson is going to be very successful. So far, so good?
Mm.
Yes.
Okay. And now, I want you to focus on the procedure. I'll give you a couple of minutes, I'll disappear. And I want you to decide what things, what areas do we need to include in the lesson procedure. Go ahead.
So, what do you think, guys?
I'm looking at the lesson procedure.
So we have here the first stage, warmer, it's included, lead-in, vocabulary building, language focus 2, controlled practice.
Oh, are we talking about the specific one? I thought we were going to be talking about like in general. Does a teacher need to include in their?
Exactly, Vasily. Yeah, that's the question. Don't worry about this specific lesson.
Mhm.
What information do we include in the procedure, basically?
Okay, so basically we need a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Don't we? So we need to like warm the students up, right?
Mhm.
In the beginning.
Okay.
Set the context.
Wait.
Oh.
Wait. I've confused you, obviously.
Mm,
It is a much simpler task than what you think. Let me show you what I meant.
okay.
That's the procedure, right?
Yes.
What information do we include in the procedure?
We have the time, we
Oh.
have the kind of information, the objective.
What the teacher does.
Exactly.
Mm,
So we have the stage, we have teacher and learner activity. What is this objective here?
What the
The
purpose
outcome.
of the?
The outcome.
The purpose of each activity, right? So the
Mm,
yeah.
stage aim, basically. Time, interaction patterns, and materials to be used.
Okay.
So it was much simpler than you thought. That's why I told you just a couple of minutes. But anyway, things to remember is that we should clearly label the stage so that it's easy to follow. Briefly describe what you and obviously the learners will be doing. Now, when we say briefly, we don't mean to write down every single word you're going to say, right? Remember, briefly and clearly means that it's easy for somebody reading it to follow what you're doing. And if you want to cast a quick glance at it because you want to remember what needs to come later in your lesson, you just have a quick look at it and you remember what you need to do. Then we describe the purpose of each activity because this also helps us check whether what we're doing is actually appropriate in relation to the stage and the following stage. Then we estimate how much time, we state the interaction pattern, and we state the materials or equipment to be used. That's the procedure. Now, and that's the summary. In relation to the heading for each stage, this will help you to go back to your lesson plan and check if your plan is logically staged. For example, remember what Vasily said at some point, you can't do scan reading before skim reading, let's say. You can't do the clarification before the warm-up, right? So a clear heading for each stage will help you keep your ideas in check and to sequence these stages in a logical manner. The description of the procedure, basically the teacher and learner activity, is just for you to be able to make sure that you know what comes next, and whether it is learner-centered enough. If, for example, we go here and we see that this column, let me take these out of the way, that this column is full of things to do, and this column is nothing, then we can see already, before we even teach the lesson, that it's going to be a very teacher-centered activity, teacher-centered lesson. Then we have the stage aims. Now, as we said, this is quite important because it will help you ensure that you have a clear rationale for each stage. And the most important thing, it will help you write the commentary, because it's why you're doing each stage, why you're doing specific activities. So far, so good?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay.
Then we have the timing. Now, this is where most teachers go crazy, right?
Yes,
However,
exactly.
you should remember that timing is just an estimate. It's not to be followed religiously. Timing is mostly for us to check that we will have enough time for the important stages of the lesson. What you need to remember when you assign time is to be realistic. In other words, allow for thinking time so that the learners are not rushed. And the time that we decide to give to particular activities shows the importance of a specific activity. Or the
Alex,
lack of importance, the secondary nature. Yes, Abu.
how long should we give the learners time to think, time to respond before we give them the answer?
4 seconds, 0.9. Why am I saying this, Abu? Because it depends. There is no number there. There is no number. Always remember that.
No.
The most important part. Oh, you mean when you elicit something?
Yeah, when you elicit a
It's usually-
response.
It's usually a matter of seconds. For example, if 3 seconds have passed and you see that no one is saying anything,
Then you
perhaps-
respond.
yes, exactly. Perhaps they don't
Okay.
know or they haven't understood. The important thing to remember always is that you need to be flexible, as I'm sure you have been in almost all of your lessons on a daily basis. So timing and time estimation is mainly a reflection of what we think is important. So therefore, I should spend a lot more time on this activity. Don't forget to give time to the learners to do this activity and that activity. Now, if in real life, if in the actual lesson, you need to change your time, of course you will be flexible with it. And this is not a problem. You have to remember that. If an activity takes 8 minutes instead of 12, that's not a problem. If it takes 20 instead of 12, then again, perhaps it was a problem of my estimation of time, but that's not a massive problem. I can adapt what comes next. And the last one, with interaction patterns, obviously that's just another way for you to check whether there is a variety of interaction so that the learners are more engaged or better engaged and they're involved in communicative activities, or it is just a very teacher-centered lesson. Now, any questions about the procedure?
No.
And let's go to the final part, the commentary. Now, and this is part of the commentary that we saw. What does that show? What does this part of the commentary show?
A rationale.
And does it connect anything with the lesson?
The essay.
Exactly. So there needs to be some reference to the background essay and to your research. Now, what about this one? What does this connect?
Learner profiles to activities.
Perfect. So there is clear reference to the class profile there.
Yeah.
And what does this show? No? No ideas? Keyword is approach. The rationale for methodological choices. So these are the things that we need to do in the commentary. In other words, explain why the lesson is shaped the way it is. Explain why you've chosen specific topics or contexts or activities or interaction patterns. Do I need to explain and describe each activity in great detail? No, that's part of the procedure. We need to refer to our background essay and to the research we've done, and refer to the learners, their needs and their wants. We don't describe the activities in detail because there's no need to duplicate information. That's in the lesson procedure. We are not interested in saying how we could have done things differently. And don't write too little or too much. Okay?
Okay.
And how do you go about planning your lesson? What do you think you need to do first? Let's say that you're teaching a grammar lesson, right? What would you do first?
Learn the student's profile. It's the first thing.
All
Where
right.
we start.
All right. I would start
Then-
by analyzing the language. Because remember, you've already analyzed the language in the essay. Now you need to come up with the specific language that you want to teach. And then I would do what Ahmed suggested. I would consider the learners, their needs and their preferences, so that I can do what after that?
Adopt the methods.
Right before that, before methods, you need to have what?
Goals
My
and
objectives. Outcomes.
Exactly. Set the learning objectives. And then it could be method, context, the shape of the lesson, right? Okay, now we've decided on those things. What do we need to actually do?
And get the material.
Perfect. So you select the material and the activities, or you design, or both. And then, okay, now I've got my procedure, I've got the materials, I know the aim. Oh, hold on a minute. What about this activity? What if something goes wrong there? So what do I do next?
Assumptions and anticipated problems.
Yes, anticipated problems. And then you can decide on how much time I should spend on each activity, how I should manage anything, so that you can review or revise activities and materials. So you see, time, as we said, is there for us to make sure that we have the necessary material to be covered, to be done in a specific time limit, like 40 to 60 minutes, so that the aims can be achieved. So first I review everything, and then I start writing down my lesson plan.
That's great.
right? So, any questions so far?
Nope.
Perfect. Then we're going to evaluate one last lesson plan. Let me send you, I'll put the lesson plan in the chat. Give me a minute to upload it. Come on, dear. All right, there it is. So it is again a grammar lesson. Okay. Oops, sorry. Is that the same?
Yes, it's the same one.
Okay, sorry, made a mistake. Just a minute. Okay, sample 2, yes.
Can you place it on the chat?
Of course. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. What I want you to do, I want you to evaluate it. In other words, this time, read it carefully and check how well it meets the criteria or not. So I'm going to send you the lesson plan in the chat, and I will be showing you the criteria too, so that you don't have to go, from window to window, basically. Give it a minute, it's halfway there. My connection today is dreadful, I don't know why. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. So I will keep the criteria here so that you can see them. Now, go through the lesson plan, and so that we don't, waste time, you can go through each section together. How would you like to do this? Would you like to do this first on your own and then compare your answers? Or would you like to go through it together? It's up to you.
Anything's fine by me.
Ahmed, what about you? What would you prefer?
Okay, we go together.
Okay.
All right, okay. Go ahead, I'll disappear.
Okay, so what about the first one, guys? Overview.
Overview of the group of learners. Okay, we have it. We have the class profile
Mhm.
and it's detailed. That's not detailed, that's not that detailed, but there's mention of their level, their background, and we have individual learner profile.
So do you think it fits the criteria well?
Yes.
Abu, what do you
Yes.
think?
I'm still reading. I would say yes.
Okay. Next, we have the aims. Are they clear? Are the learning outcomes clear?
With the profile, check
Mhm.
the individual ones, don't forget. Is the information about individual learners relevant to the lesson?
Oh, okay. Let's just double check that.
He's made a mistake in the background information table. He has grammar and systems inverted.
Oh,
Yeah, where it says LSA focus, it says grammar, and where it says LSA area, it says systems. Should have been the other way around. But anyway.
Grammar is a system.
Yeah, but the focus where it says systems or skills, that should be systems.
Systems. Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, I love it. You're exhausted now. You can't think. Go to the aims. Go to the aims.
I think looking at the profiles, not much has been said about specific grammar things. It's too general.
All right, we'll check that later. Go through the rest of them. Start
Okay.
with the aims.
With the aims, okay? Aims. Should be able to.
For example, in 1A, he says past states won't be covered. Should that be there? And what about the secondary aims? To
Yeah, they are
demonstrate
not related.
to demonstrate an example of connected speech to the learners. Do you think that's clear?
Not related, actually. If you go number 4 in the evidence of achievement, so the aims 4 and number 4, as you mentioned, they are not relating. During the grammar presentation, the teacher draws attention of pronunciation, just I think it's far related from the grammar lesson, which is used to. He's focusing on used to in the past.
Yeah, I don't think they're clear enough.
And we have secondary aim number 2, listening for main details in the recording. This is not our focus at all.
It's the secondary aim, but in a recording.
Can you look at the 1B, the main learners should be able to use the positive, negative, and interrogative form of that structure. Which structure is not clearly mentioned or stated?
Yeah, I mean, you can bet it's used to, but
But it's not clearly stated. She should state it clearly.
have a look at evidence of achievement number 3, secondary aims. The final 30 minutes is quite learner focused and aims to encourage learners to practice their speaking. Students should be able to recognize things a man did in his past and doesn't do now, and vice versa. How do you recognize things a man did in his past and doesn't do now? I mean, the descriptions are horrible, really, some of them.
Vague.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
vague, yeah,
vague, they're unclear, they're poorly expressed.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
keep comparing it, and I keep comparing it to the previous lesson plan where you had all these concrete and clear
Yeah.
explanations,
This one
right?
is the bipolar opposite of that too.
The man that doesn't do now and did in the past.
I've just read the commentary
Uh-huh.
and trying to make sense of what's going on here. And I can't.
And they are very short. Look at the secondary aims to practice speaking skill. Well, that's very short. They are not clear and vague, as you said, Abu.
Yeah, how? In what context? In what way?
Exactly.
I agree.
And look at the justification number 3. The final 30 minutes is quite
Yeah.
learner focused and aims to encourage learners to practice their speaking, which is not our main
Yeah.
aim or goal at
Yeah.
all.
Mhm.
You're right. You're correct. It's like she's saying that confidence over competency. Or fluency over accuracy. In the first lesson, we were given, I think, a timeline. Just check.
Now, let's have a look at the profiles together.
Okay.
Now, it's grammar. There is some not as detailed information as the previous one, right?
Yes. That's what the point I'm trying to make here.
But it's still okay. It does meet the criterion. What about the individual learner profiles?
They don't have the background about their work or preferences.
All right, it's not as important. It still meets the criterion. Can you see that they do have information, some general information for some more specific information
Yeah,
for
more
others, right?
specific for others, yeah.
Okay, so the class profile and the individual profiles do meet the criteria. They're not as detailed as the previous one, but they still meet the criterion, basically.
Mhm.
Now, what about the aims?
That's the disaster.
Yes, that's the problem here.
Why?
They are not specific, very vague, and they should be telling us specifically what he is made in his head so we can read his mind.
So they should be able to use the structure used to talk about past habits. States won't be covered. They should be able to use the positive, negative, and interrogative. And they should be able to differentiate between when to use used to and when to use past simple. Okay.
So there's too many, you mean, main aims?
I would think so, but overall, they're not bad. It's clear.
The main ones, yeah.
Exactly. The secondary ones are too sketchy, but the main ones are not bad. It's basically using used to talk about past habits in all three forms: positive, interrogative, and negative. And they will be able to know that they will be able to see that used to is to talk about past habits only. Okay, so the main aim is fine. The secondary aims could be stated in a bit more detail. What about the language analysis? So we have the forms,
We have the forms in.
we have the meaning and the use, we have phonology, and we also have this section. Now, this section is irrelevant.
Hmm.
It doesn't
Yeah,
belong in the
rational.
language analysis.
This is a rational.
No. These questions are to be done in the lesson, not even in the rationale. The language analysis should be a bit more detailed.
Yeah, it's
For example, which examples will be used?
very basic.
Exactly. Now, the timetable fit is quite nice.
Mm.
It meets the criterion. What about the assumptions?
It's too basic.
There is nothing on the activities, there is nothing on the topic. There is nothing in relation to the ability of the learners, right? And some of them, like this one, are quite vague. Like connected speech, yeah, in relation to what in particular? What about the problems and solutions?
Yeah, they seem okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
I would also make, because he seems to be the teacher, I can't remember if it's a he or a she, the teacher seems to be quite well aware of the learners. I would include some individual learners here too. For example, which learner is likely to say that? Which learner is likely to do this? The list and resources are fine. And now what about the commentary? What did you think about the commentary?
It's not connected to the profile.
Sorry, I've highlighted the wrong paragraph. What about this one? Right?
Mhm.
It is connected. Can you see
Oh.
any connection to the essay though?
No.
Ah, okay, so there's no connection to the essay. Also, have a look at this one. Is it connected to the profile?
Because they approve themselves with grasping the grammar being. Um, what evidence is there of that?
Well, the observation. Let's not be too strict, Abu.
Oh, okay.
However, my next question would be, can you see anything about the activities or methodological choices? Remember, we don't need a detailed description, that's for the procedure. But can you see like why they have chosen specific order of activities?
No,
No.
nothing.
Exactly, so that's what's missing there. So, in a nutshell, yes, it's not as detailed or as good as the other one, but most of the criteria are met. So remember not to be overly strict with yourselves or with sample lesson plans, okay?
Alex, is that a pass or a fail?
Well, this specific category would be okay. this specific category would be okay. What do I mean by that?
It's pass.
No, wait. Now, this was okay. This was okay. When I say okay, I mean met, fully met. This was okay. This one was not. This one was okay. This one was okay. The rest of them, the language analysis, for example, was not okay. The aims partially met. So were the assumptions, and so was the sequence and the commentary. So most of them are partially, some of them are partially met, others are fully met, and one criterion is not met. So as a category, this is fine. But straight away we can see that it's not just the lesson plan, there are other categories, and it's not the lesson plan is a pass or the lesson plan is a fail, because we need to see the lesson too. But as a lesson, yes, it seems to be on the pass border.
It's borderline.
So, any questions? Perfect. Abu, nice to have met you. Ahmed and Vasilis, nice to have seen you again. I'll stop the
Yes,
recording now.